Check. Okay, welcome to the Recover Yourself workshop. We're a couple minutes early currently, but we are moving forward as planned. So at 9 o'clock, we'll start chatting a little bit about Recover Yourself and what that is all about. I want to start just by giving you guys a brief intro. Anybody that comes at 9 should know this already, but recovering yourself is the work that I do. I work with a limited number of clients every month in order to help them recover themselves. So much of our work today is revolved around this idea that we have to understand something and where we're going, what we're doing, how we're doing it, and all of these sorts of things, right? Like we have this idea that people got it together, and even though we've been talking about and we've been becoming increasingly vulnerable within that space, it's nowhere near what we're really talking about when we talk about recovering yourself. Recovering yourself is understanding who you are completely, deep within you. You are the thing you're going to be recovering. Of course, we're all recovering from different things, and that's what this workshop is for those of you who are here with me personally, that are part of the workshop. Those of you that are visiting the workshop on the live or the recorded version, this is just going to be an intro. It's going to be the first hour of a 3-hour workshop in which we discuss what we're going to discover. We're going to talk about the brain more in the personal, in the later sections. We're going to go through an exercise in the later exercises, or in the later stages of the workshop, that take you through to get to know who you are a little bit more. Once you've done this workshop, once you've gone through this workshop, you will have enough to be able to move forward on your own. That being said, you are going to have to remind yourself of the things that you've learned here over and over and over until you really understand what's going on. We're going to be talking about things like that we have addictions to. That's going to be we're going to talk about those as pacifiers, things that you utilize out in the world that help you pacify how you're feeling about what you're going through and what you're experiencing in your life. Because your life is yours, and you were born into a culture that already existed and really only benefits about 12% of the population. And because our culture built by colonists, Europeans, that is like our schooling system. When I was a kid, there was only one out there. I mean, you could be homeschooled, but that was actually, I found that the homeschooling people were actually more entrenched in the ideas that school was trying to persuade us to believe in. So these ideas that we picked up when we were born, what's our responsibility to our family, what's our responsibility to our culture, our community, what's our responsibility to learn to be a part of the economy. I mean, today we're talking about putting the economy in front of the health of people, and that is not okay for everybody. However, that is okay for a selection of population that is very much that's very hell bent on making sure that the economy is the thing that's held up. Why do they want the economy held up? Because that is the culture that they understand, and that's how far they can and that's how far they can understand it to go. And so individuals don't mean as much as that. And we will often choose our beliefs over ourselves, but so many of our beliefs have been given to us by other people, other places, other institutions, religion, school, family, What else there's culture, your friends, your work, your job, like all of these places we have picked up things that have given us this sense of self, or this sense of culture, this sense of what are we living up to, what are we here to provide the world. And it gives us constant feedback on that by giving us rewards. And so we have inadvertently built a world of transactional relationships. And transactional relationships are the most detrimental and harmful sorts of relationships we could be in. And so, recovering yourself is about recovering who you are at your core, and understanding what that looks like and who that is, so that you don't have to be manipulated by the world around you to be that which you are not. And so, that is what recovering yourself is all about. I am coming out of addiction. I spent 13 years out there, as we say, utilizing drugs, alcohol, and all sorts of things. Even after I stopped using drugs and alcohol, I utilized porn as well as gambling and other sorts of behavior, emotional outburst, anger, frustration. These sorts of things helped me deal with the life that I was trying to live, but the life I was trying to live wasn't mine. And so finding mine and being able to recover myself was something that really resonated with everything that I do now. And so recovering yourself came from me having gotten a diagnosis of MS, and I was bedridden for a while, and I lost about 80% of the motor function on my left side, and so couldn't walk and couldn't do all these things that I was taking for granted. And so, uh, in utilizing the things that I learned through recovery, through my having recovered from so many different vices and pacifiers, I built this workshop. I built my practice of my Recover Yourself practice. Like I mentioned earlier, I see a limited number, about 10 people a month, but I only see them for a month. Um, After I see my clients for a month, they go off on their own and they live their lives. The reason that I only see my clients 4 times or for only a month is because codependency and other things kind of get in the way of me seeing them longer, as well as the fact that you don't need more than 4 weeks. All you need is a rocket booster to get you into orbit. Once you're in orbit, you're going to be fine. Nothing's going to be drawing you back unless you want to get closer to unless you want to get too close to those feelings of pacifiers, that escaping, right? You want to get back into the gravitational pull of feeling like you're escaping. Get into that gravitational pull, and you can feel that as soon as you start having a emotional experience. As soon as you start telling yourself a story, you gravitate towards that story. That story, as soon as you start feeling gravitating toward that story, that's not you. That is what we're going to be considering a trigger. Triggers can come from anywhere. Triggers can be happy things, sad things. We're going to focus on those negative triggers, things that frustrate you, things that get you angry and frustrated and upset, things that make you defend yourself, things that make you defend other things, things that you don't care about that you will run to the defense of for no reason. So that is what recovering yourself is all about. Welcome to the Recover Yourself podcast. I am your guest for this podcast, MartinJon. I am the person who has developed the Recover Yourself work and all that it entails. Of course, this is expressed by many different people over years and years and years. I just did a podcast episode and talked with a great friend of mine, Alan Baker, about evolution. And so I read the Tao Te Ching, and the Tao Te Ching was written a long time ago. And I look at evolution as being a growth in mindset and a growth towards that which we are more, the veil of, the veil between us and consciousness has thinned. And so we talk a lot about this idea that the veil is thinner, and so we have access to more today. So you may very well know more than Lao Tzu did when he wrote the Tao Te Ching, because the veil is thinner. He had to withstand and endure quite a bit in order to understand the things that he understood. And today we're embracing those so much further, and so many more people are embracing those. And we're going to talk a lot about the idea that we have shifted. We have shifted in consciousness, and we have shifted in expression of that consciousness. And so we are going to get into it shortly. I'm going to check this out really quick, see if we have anybody making comments or anything. If you do, please make a comment here on YouTube or wherever you're watching, and I will be happy to respond when I get the opportunity. It's only me, so I'm not going to be able to get the opportunity much during this workshop, but the workshop is geared toward sending you on your way to understand recovering yourself. If you are part of this workshop, if you're getting your CEUs at the end of this workshop, you'll have an exercise that you can utilize for yourself as well as your clients, and you will get the opportunity to have a 30-minute one-on-one consultation with me. But we will talk about that at the end. Those of you watching the video, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's helpful. I hope you can glean enough from it so that you don't, you either want to go through the whole workshop, or you can understand where this is coming from and incorporate it into your life. So underneath the desire for explanations, there is a story already written within our lives. And that story is written in the language of perception. We tend to move towards language quite a bit in our lives because we are language oriented. We communicate via language. And so there is a little person in your head that is incessantly talking to you and actually narrating the world around you with commentary. And that guy is not necessarily your friend. It's just keeping you grounded in the reality, or in, what you would consider the reality that is going on around you, while you're obviously aware that those things are happening because that voice is narrating it somehow helps you remember it, helps you kind of take up space in your mind. So it's a very important step to be able to recognize the difference between you, the observer of that voice, and the voice. And that's an important first step. But before we had language, we had perception. We would be in a situation and we would find a way to understand that situation without words, because before we had language, we were alive and we were experiencing things. And actually, as we were learning to talk, through the experience, through the perceptions that we had of the world around us. Those perceptions, before they were words, were just that, just perceptions. They were neutral perceptions. So when we saw arguing, we saw what that meant. When something, lashed out and fought with us, then we saw how that felt. And through all of those things, we were having this experience that we perceived was something specific. And then we learned words around that. So all of our words, all of the words that you use, all of the words that I use, are used slightly differently because we understood them slightly differently. No matter how much we want to explain and define things, they are still, under the surface, a perception. And so when I use a word, what we like to think is that I'm going to say the word trauma, and you're going to understand what I mean when I say the word trauma. Or I'm going to use the word mistake, and you're going to understand what I mean by the word mistake. And even though we have definitions for these things out in the world, those definitions are created by words. And our words are very, very personal and mean something very different to us than they do to other people. So I want to welcome today to the Recover Yourself workshop. We are all want to be distracted. We want to distract ourselves every day. And what this ultimately does is help us create this sense of awareness avoidance. We're constantly avoiding being aware of something. That voice in your head is constantly like dictating things, telling you should or shouldn't, or do or don't, or this or that. And you're defining what's happening. And what's happening is that you're perceiving things and then compartmentalizing it. And so it's helping you keep everything in a little box. The problem with wanting to practice awareness avoidance and avoiding being aware of the whole, avoiding being aware of the edge of the box that you're creating for your life, is that you inadvertently start asking things externally to fill your lives with those things that you have been, those gifts, those things that awareness brings. So awareness brings you all of this wonderful stuff, and but you have to get away from the perceptions, but the perceptions hold that box and hold you in that box. And so getting outside of that is a very difficult thing. Some of these things, and this isn't an exhaustive list by any stretch, but some of the things that you are going to that many people try to avoid being aware of is how much or how little they trust, or how secure they are or are not, how calm they are or are not, how abundant they feel, how confident they feel, or how safe. And now safe, security, trust, all of those things may seem very similar, but they are very different. And because they're different words, we all have different ways of understanding those things. Please give me 1 second. My coat's coming off the back of the jacket. My jacket's coming off the back of the chair. So, excuse me, little homemade kombucha. Trust, safety, security. You know, security is one of those things where if you don't feel secure in yourself, you will secure your home, you'll secure your car, you'll secure all these things just because you don't feel secure. Now, if you feel secure, you'll be more likely to not worry about the fact that maybe you didn't lock your door, maybe you didn't turn the alarm system on. You'll be less likely to engage in activities that continue to exacerbate your feelings of not feeling secure. But you have to get to the bottom of the fact that you don't feel secure. So this is we're gonna for those of us that are going through the exercise, we're gonna go find if security is your issue. You're going to be able to address that today. We're going to be able to find the root of where that security issue exists. And once we do that, we'll be able to add that root to the experience of not feeling secure. We can say, oh, I need to do this. Why do I have this need to do this? We'll ask the questions. Where are these coming from? Because when I don't feel abundant, the idea is that I don't feel abundant, right? Taking blame on something and saying, well, it's because of A, B, or C, like these experiences that I'm having in the world. Those are different. Feeling abundant and having $1 million are two different things, right? Feeling abundant and having and defining that in any way is not abundant, right? Like the moment we want to define something like that, we start to have these experiences that make us feel less abundant because we're attempting to feel abundant. We're attempting to fool ourselves into the space of abundance. And that is why we want to recover ourselves, because what you're doing when you go out to say, well, I'll feel abundant when I have a great job, or I'll feel abundant when I'm gone vacation, or I'll feel abundant when I have $1 million. Well, all that does is put that out there somewhere, and you can never achieve that. So I do talk about things like this. So in the podcast episode, in the Recover Yourself podcast episode about evolution, which came out a couple weeks ago, and I already mentioned in this video. So you will want to check that out if this is an interesting topic for you. Looking outside of yourself for those answers rather than, and because you can't grab abundance, right? So you have to be able to receive it. And in order to receive it, you have to be open to that. So, and this is when we start talking about the difference between recovering from and recovering to. See, like when we are trying to have something, when we're trying to grasp abundance, when we're trying to grasp security, when we're trying to grasp safety and calm, what we're doing is we're recovering from the feeling of not having it. When we can realize that we can't do that, we can move into this state of recovering too. Now, this is all about addiction, right? We're always coming back to the space of addiction because what it is to want is to be addicted to that thing, right? Like you are addicted to living in this body, you're addicted to living in this kind of physical sort of experience. And the thing is that there is more to it than that. There is a lot more to living than just having that little experience. I want to check something really quick. Well, yeah. The PowerPoint has stopped, so I'm going to try and refresh it. There we go. Okay. 1 second. Sorry. Okay. We're starting it up again. Pardon me. All right. I want to make sure that we are still sharing. We are not. Slideshow, share. Okay, now we're back to the beginning. And hello, my name is Martin. No, just because we doesn't mean. Okay, so to recover from is the most important part of the recovery process. So taking that first step, moving forward into that space of, all right, I have to admit that I have a problem, right? I have to admit that I am putting more faith into a thing that is not me, right? When we talk about drugs and alcohol, that's easy, right? Because the entire world hates drugs and alcohol. But if we were to look at Amazon and the instant gratification we get, and that I've seen lots of people with, Amazon Prime addictions where they get there. Like I see these Amazon Prime ships or boats or sorry, I don't know why I'm saying ships and boats. I'm sure that you're using plenty of those, but I'm seeing the trucks everywhere. And they are going out fast and furious, and they're taking all of these packages and delivering them to, I would venture to say, sick individuals that are having trouble being with themselves. And so when they find themselves at home, they start ordering things that they may not even need or want, but and we know this about addiction. The addiction is about the hunt. It's about the anticipation of receiving it. And so actually going out and shopping, that finding is the excitement. But Amazon has found a way to give it to you quicker and give it to you. So now you can just search, you see it, you can look at a little bit of things, like maybe not even anything. You know what you want, you go and you find it, and then you order it, and now it's coming to you within the hour or 3 hours or whatever, and within the day. And if you get that sort of instant gratification, if you continually receive that sort of gratification, what is that going to make you feel? Like you have delivered it, you know it's coming in an hour, that anticipation is up, you get that hit of dopamine, and now you're addicted to this cycle of instant gratification. So it's going to make doing hard work harder. Doing that work that doesn't give you instant gratification a little bit harder. And so it's really important to step away from the things that we're addicted to. So, and this is often things that I have to talk about very, very clearly with people that are in the field, because I never want us to overlook the importance of recovering from for recovering to. Recovering to is a process that we have to get to, but we can only get there after we understand that we are thinking for ourselves and not through instant gratification, not through drugs, alcohol, other things like that, because all of these things react the same in the body. So to focus on what we're recovering from, however important it is, associates us with the thing that we're trying to recover from, right? That thing that we're leaving behind, that thing that we no longer are associated with. When I was quitting cocaine, I had to distance myself from cocaine. And at the time, I was still drinking and doing things like that. But then after I distanced myself, I had a couple of years without having used cocaine. I had to reinvest in that relationship so I could understand how bad it was for me. It wasn't healthy, but the distance that I had gained between my cocaine and my relapse and my life at that point was so much, there was so much distance, and I was continuing to say, I can't use cocaine, I can't use cocaine, I can't. And so like I had pushed that pendulum really far, and so it swung the other way. And as it did, it caught up with me, and I decided that, oh, well, let me re-engage with this relationship with cocaine, because by re-engaging with it, I can re-examine it. And that was silly, of course, but I didn't have a place I was going, right? I wasn't recovering to anything at that point. I was simply recovering from. And because I was recovering from everything, all of my thoughts about the drug of choice or about the thing I'm recovering from is now in question. It's in question because I no longer have an active relationship with it. So long-term recovery, so that once you get into spaces, you no longer need to, once you get into a space in which you're no longer, being drawn to use these drugs of choice or substances or behaviors or whatever on a daily basis, you're going to want to find out where you're going. Because if you don't, you're going to re-engage with that. And maybe you can re-engage with it in a healthy way. But if that is true, like, can you healthily use drugs and alcohol? Can you healthily have, like interactions that are revolved around instant gratification that contribute to your life in positive ways and things? Well, those are all things you have to answer for yourself, and your clients have to answer for themselves. However, in order to get to that place, you have to be able to distance yourself from it enough and have an idea of where you're going. Because if you don't know where you're going, then of course you can make up stories about what it looks like to recover from and continue to utilize your drugs of choice. So to recover yourself is work we do to strengthen and expand our lives, to make them bigger. So if we recover from and then decide that, okay, well, we're on a new journey of recovering too, now I'm going to introduce alcohol to my life again because I have a destination. Well, that could very well fail because it's not expanding your life. The idea of recovering to, the idea of recovering ourselves is all about strengthening and expanding. And if something gets in the way of that strength and expansion of your life, those are the things that we are utilizing to practice awareness avoidance, once again, as we mentioned earlier. So recovering ourselves launches lives that are self-guided. You cannot be told how to live your life when you're on a process of recovering yourself. Now, that doesn't mean you don't ask for help. That doesn't mean you don't search for answers. It doesn't mean you don't look for things. But when it's self-guided, we can cease the incessant searching for answers from outside of ourselves. The searching for answers of like, oh my God, like, what's this feeling I'm having? Or when we need it, we have it. It's at our fingertips. Google exists. But when we search it for ourselves, rather than just asking one person, this is again why I only work with my clients 4 times, is because when I work with my clients, I don't want them constantly coming to me, constantly asking me what the right answer is. I am not your answer, right? I am not the idol in this situation. You have to find yourself. You have to find your own answers. And that is super uncomfortable in our society because we don't encourage that. We encourage, you have the right answer. The right answer is what I told you. I remember in 3rd grade, let's say, Pluto was a planet. The right answer was Pluto was the 9th planet. In 8th grade, Pluto was not a planet. And so no longer was that answer I was given right. I'm realizing throughout even my school years that not only am I regurgitating answers that you want, they're not right. You just told me they were right, and they were right for the test, but the test is being taken in a certain context. And so for you to take control of your life and take control of how you live your life, and I'm not saying that when you are living your life, you allow other people to live theirs. A lot of fears people have today are, well, if people think they're right, then they're going to force other people to be right with them. And that's not the way this works. When you're recovering yourself, you're not trying to help people recover yourself for them. You want them to act accordingly. So if you don't wear a mask, that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to possibly wear a mask if that is if that's my intention. You're attacking me for that, or my attacking you for that, is things that we have to then go and recover ourselves about later. All of that in the longer version of this. If you're here to stick around for the whole thing, you'll get to hear more about that. So today there is a desire to connect with oneself on a deeper level. There are memes and pop culture are ever increasing in this message. When I was a kid in the 70s, like what a man was a very specific thing, and it is nothing as we understand a man today, right? We are more open today. I mean, we're talking about transgender people today openly on the news, and that was something that was only presented as freaks when I was a kid on like Jerry Springer and other shows like that. And that I didn't even like that when I was a kid, right? When I was watching that frustrated me. So the world is opening up to who we are and what we're doing and how we're living together. And we are more open today than we ever were. I know it doesn't always seem that way, but hang in there. It's coming. It's not easy to make transitions like that because some people, I will once again point towards my podcast and the evolution episode. We talked about this idea. Let's say there are, 100 levels of consciousness, and everybody on the planet now is somewhere between 46 and 62. And those at 62 are in a very different place than those at 46, and those at 52 are, so are closer to 46. And so they're moving towards things. And the idea is, although we have free will, once we start moving in the right direction, once we start recovering ourselves, once we start moving towards who we are and who we were born to be, we won't want to turn around because it will feel so much better. Yes, it'll be difficult. Yes, we'll have rough days, but we will feel more at peace with ourselves. So the desire, that desire for moving forward, expanding our lives, as we talked about before, forces us to add the conversation of recovering to this recovery conversation. Before the last handful of years, recovery was still something that wasn't openly spoken about and in the way that it is. I was speaking about recovery for a long time, but I didn't compartmentalize it within recovery because it wasn't a conversation. Once you started talking about it, people would shy away. Now there are more and more people talking about it, and so it's a little easier to have this conversation. But when we speak of recovering from, we define life as living without. And because we have this space, we're in this space today of trying to move towards more open consciousness and move towards ourselves more. We are forced to add the conversation of recovering too. So we immediately start defining life as living within, not only within the confines of life itself, but living within ourselves, living within our communities, and living within our world, within the consciousness that is part of all of that. Due to the nature of our culture, however, many things attempt to give us a sense of depth while only offering escape. And this video clip is of Ruby Warrington, author of Sober Curious, who I interviewed a while back for the Recover Yourself podcast. And I want to introduce you to a clip from that. Nope. Let me pause and make sure that I am sharing my I want to make sure I'm sharing the audio. Give me 1 second. You know, it's always weird trying to find the share, and I don't know exactly where it is. And I've done it so many times, and I actually did it already, but I can't. Share computer sound. Got it. Okay, so I'm gonna.
Pro abstinence. It's not so much that I'm pro abstinence. I'm pro clarity. Whatever it takes to have real, true clarity of thought and mind and intention, that's what I'm pro, because I think there are so many things in our world today that are set up and designed to steal our attention and to shape our opinions and to shape who we think we are. And we have to be super vigilant in this society that we live in now to retain clarity. And I think any substance, any behavior that kind of clouds our connection to ourselves ultimately gets in the way of clarity.
And that is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about this idea that, like, there are so many things out there, shopping, that just take us away from who we are. Not only from who we are, but the direction we want to go. There is nothing out there that is trying to keep us from being who we are other than ourselves. Yes, culture wants to stay the way it is. It wants to stay economic based, and it wants to keep all of these things that are detrimental to us. But we're the ones who are building them. We're the ones that are building society to do that, and so we're the ones that want to dictate how that's going to start moving forward. And we do want to start looking at the pacifiers that we use in order to help us deal with those escapes, right? Drugs and alcohol, of course, those are the biggest pacifiers. Even if we are, even if we find ourselves to be passive users of marijuana, or whatever it's called, recreational users of marijuana, we don't even use it every month. Maybe we just use it a little bit. The question is always, well, why? Do we need to? Do we want to? Is this moving us into a place that we want to be? Television is one that we could be using all the time, especially now that we're in quarantine. Television is something that people are finding themselves watching and maybe not even engaging with. And if you're not engaging with it, sitting with yourself might be a good option right now. Sitting with yourself and trying to figure out what it is you're feeling, trying to figure out how you can kind of move forward out of this space of feeling lack of calm, security, vulnerability, whatever it is you're feeling. Social media is something that I know I have a 25-minute limit every day on Instagram because I have spent over an hour on Instagram some days. Now, some of those days I post on Instagram and it takes me a while to post, but it's nice to have a 25-minute limit for my day because I don't want to spend 1/16 of my day on Instagram. I want to be in my life. I want to be in my body. And so emotional loops are another one. So many people get addicted to their own emotional loops. They go out and they get mad at people the way they drive. They get mad at people at work, and they get mad at people at home. They get mad at their neighbors, and it just doesn't stop. These are ways that we utilize the world around us for us to be victims and for us to check out and stop being, as we mentioned earlier, aware. Right? These are ways people practice awareness avoidance. Shopping, as I mentioned with Amazon, especially the instant gratification that Amazon offers, shopping is a pacifier many people use. And questioning, is this stuff that you need, that you're purchasing? Is it, what does that require? Like, where is the line for need and want and desire and pacifiers? Gaming is one that actually is getting added to the list of addictions. But I always want to warn that looking at the lists of addictions that professionals are posting is a very tough thing to do. I personally don't look at alcohol and drug addiction as a disease. The disease is not loving yourself. The symptom is drug and alcohol use. That's how I see it. And all of these are symptoms, and they're the same symptoms, right? This is a symptom to a disease that you have. And that disease is that you don't know who you are, you don't love yourself, and recovering yourself is the solution to that. Many people, for since the 80s, as far as I know, call themselves workaholics. Maybe even before that. I was watching the movie The Shining the other day, uh, and in that movie, in one of the first scenes, Jack Nicholson's character says uh, that his wife is a ghost story and horror addict. And it made me just realize that the word addict has been around a while, but only for about 100 years. And it was in the 70s that addict really, found its peak in use within the language. I looked up the etymology of it just because it was so interesting to me to figure out how the word addict was used in our culture. And he said, ghost story horror film addict, in describing his wife. And, and he is also in this space of recovering from, but only forcing himself to not drink. And we find later, when forcing himself, that when willpower no longer is in control and when he is controlled by I don't know. We don't have to go into the movie The Shining, but moving into other things like eating. Caffeine is one that I always kind of point to because coffee has become such a. I remember back in the 90s, maybe the late 80s. There was a Murphy Brown episode where Murphy Brown was, and the TV show, if you don't know it, had tried to quit drinking coffee because she was pregnant or something like that, and it said, "Oh yeah, replace all the crack houses with coffee houses." And so she spoke poorly of coffee. And I was young at the time, and maybe I was starting to drink at that point, or I was probably already using something, but I recognized that coffee at that point was problematic. And what I like to ask everybody that is experiencing this workshop right now is, in your coffee use, do you choose to drink coffee before you order it or before you make it? Or do you choose to drink coffee the night before? Because many people in the United States, and this probably goes for tea in England and and other places in the world as well, this is just a stand-in for awareness. Right? It is something I can put my attention on. And many people go to bed knowing that they're going to have coffee. And so I often ask, how many of you chose to drink coffee today? And then I take it a step further and I say, how many of you actually chose to drink coffee today? Or you chose to drink coffee a long time ago and are just executing that decision today? Because so many of us just execute decisions and we are not actually making choices. And it is within that making of the choice that is the most important thing, because who are you today may not be getting a fair shake. You may not be giving who you are today an opportunity to be who you are today, which is why we want to put our pacifiers in check. We want to recover from our pacifiers and then decide, do we want to use that today? And then you choose every day from that point forward. Yes, 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 no, right? Eventually, possibly. I don't know. That's up to you. Pardon me. Okay, so as we just spoke about, where are you not showing up in terms of your coffee addictions, if that's something that you carry? Watching Netflix when you come home, that's another one. Turning it on without even processing, do I want to watch TV? Is there something else I want to do? Do I want to be a person who comes home and puts on the TV every day at this time? And if you're not doing that, not putting it in check, then you are being controlled by Netflix. You're being controlled by Amazon. You're being controlled by coffee. All of these things are controlling you and the way you live your life. So every day, of course, we have to step away from one thing or another. And although this is normal, are we taking note of the things that cause us to want to step away? What causes you to want to drink coffee every morning? Is it a belief that you'll be tired? Is it just because? Is it ritual? Is it like what is your interaction with it? What happens in your mind in order to allow that to continue happening and allow you to put yourself second? So awareness is noticing where we check out or where we're choosing not to engage. So and just adding awareness is going to help us heal, because once you recognize where these places are that you are allowing yourself to check out, where you're allowing yourself not to engage in things and allowing yourself to just pass time, so that's going to point you in the right direction. And we're going to go through an exercise today that points you in that direction so that you can find these places and find the roots and find the root cause of these things. Because once you find the root cause of these things, there's nothing that will stop you from starting to process them. Because once you start processing it, it's not going to stop until it's processed, because you're aware. What you're going to find is that most of the things that you're choosing to not engage with, most of the things that you're choosing to check out with, are things that you are experiencing because of false stories that you're telling yourself that have nothing to do with reality whatsoever. And if and when you decide to break these roots apart and these ideas of abandonment, these ideas of fear, these ideas that you've picked up since childhood, these perceptions you picked up before you had language to be able to sort through it, you'll find that so many of those things are lies, and that those lies are the thing that we currently uh, are moving towards rather than ourselves. So there is a gap between the conscious and subconscious mind. As I spoke earlier, the subconscious mind holds all these perceptions and the conscious mind holds all these thoughts. Those thoughts are being controlled by the subconscious perceptions. And you're going to tell yourself stories that make the perceptions true every time, in order to close the gap between these two so that you have more access to your subconscious mind. In order to close the gap between the subconscious and conscious minds, you want to become aware of what's happening around us and how it points back to us. Now, we're going to talk later on about this idea that everything that you see, is reflecting you back to yourself. This is an old concept that we've heard. You don't see the world as it is, you see it as you are, all of these things. That's great. That's great. But how does that work where the rubber meets the road? Because that is what's most important. You are important, and the way you process this information is important. So how you move forward towards yourself, how you move forward towards that which is most healthy for you, is going to be really important to take into consideration. Because when you're moving forward through the subconscious aspects of your fears and of your fight, flight, flee, freeze, um, salient brain network, right? So we're going to be talking about two different networks in the brain, the salient network and the default mode network. Default mode just kind of puts you wherever you are, and you pay attention to multiple different things, and you know what's going on. If you want to focus your attention, you can, and you can focus on one thing and then another thing, no problem. The salient network is like when you get triggered and all of a sudden there's only one thing on your mind, you only have one aspect to move, and you can't focus on anything else. That's the salient network. We're going to break those apart. We're going to talk about how the subconscious mind forces our hand in some of those situations. So if there's anything in the world that you don't like, there is something about you don't like, and trying to break down what it is you don't like out in the world and how that relates back to you is the exercise that we'll be going through to figure out what it is about you and how you are responding to the world around you when you're actually just responding to your own fears and disgust or dislike or distaste for what has happened to you, whether that's trauma or that's your own something of your own accord. In the terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when we become secure in love and belonging, it can be said that we're thinking clearly. It's a really important aspect to everything that I do because I do talk to and do CEU. So this workshop is for continuing education units for professionals working within behavioral health. And I never want to miss an opportunity to remind everybody that like this conversation that we're having, this idea that you are the problems you see in the world or whatnot, this is not for those that are low in love and belonging or having physical problems within Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You are, you, of course, as the counselor, are responsible for understanding that these people need to recover from before they can start having a conversation of recovery too. We can plant seeds and we can show people how they are creating problems, creating worse problems out of things that they're experiencing at the moment. But it's a really important aspect to understand that like the higher you up on the scale, the better off you are in terms of having this conversation and taking ownership for the situations that you find yourself in. And this is the scale. It's very likely that people could be in the high esteem section in many parts of their lives, but still be not sheltered, still not have a place to live, or still not have a constant source of food. And so, you know, we move throughout this scale throughout the days, weeks, and months as we live. It's not like we are just existing in one space, which is why you can plant seeds. But take into consideration that as you recover yourself, you want to give people space to recover themselves. Your fears of being homeless are not necessarily your client's fears of being homeless. And so recovering yourself is going to be the first step that you're going to want to take so that you don't have to stand up for your limitations any longer. We're gonna get through those, and then we'll be able to adopt some of these things for our clients. So this is where we end the free live part of the workshop. This workshop, this Recover Yourself workshop. Anybody that is working in the behavioral health field, you should check out the Recover Yourself podcast. These are great areas to incorporate with your clients and with groups to have conversations and discussions about what people are going through and what and so that we all can start having this conversation of what are we recovering to, because what we're recovering from is usually obvious. Those are the things that we're trying to get away from. What we're recovering to is shifting sands all the time. It's always a moving target, and thinking clearly, as we mentioned in the last slide, is all about understanding that where you are today is not going to be where you are tomorrow. And so being open to being wherever you are right now is the most important aspect um, of where you're at. So I want to thank you for joining me for the Recover Yourself workshop. This part was, I wish I could say it was brought to you by anybody, but it was brought to you by me, MartinJon, and the Recover Yourself podcast and everything that I do. Follow me on Instagram at MartinJon, MartinJon. Please donate to my Patreon page or my podcast at anchor.fm it's either Recover Yourself or MartinJon. You'll be able to find links to that on my website, martinjon.com. Thank you. Have a great day.